What's up everybody? How's it going? Today we're going to be fixing these Joycons that have drift. This video will be more of a tutorial type, and you guys should be able to follow along with me if you're trying to fix your Joycons as well. These Joycons aren't horribly beat up, but you can definitely tell that they were not taken super great care of. Trying out the thumbsticks too, I can immediately tell a difference compared to my Joycons, so they definitely have an issue. In order to fix these, I bought a kit from Gulikit off of Amazon, and these are Hall Effect thumbsticks, so they are much better than the stock Alps thumbsticks. There was some stuff included in this kit. So it came with the thumbsticks, and it also came with some thumbstick grips, which I will not be using because I hate those things. It doesn't matter what brand they're from, I always hate them. They're the worst. In this bag of tools, it came with a plastic pair of tweezers. They don't feel too bad, but they're definitely not as good as my metal tweezers. It also came with a brush, and I'm not really sure why this was included in here, but it's a really bad quality brush. I should not be able to pull the bristles out like that, so I will definitely not be using this for anything. This kit also came with a plastic pick, and I'm going to compare a couple of these things to the iFixit tools of similar style, and I gotta be honest, this thing isn't horrible, but I definitely like the iFixit one better, so I probably won't be using that. And this spudger is actually pretty nice, but again, I feel like the iFixit one in the kits that they give you is better. And now I'm going to dump this bag out so I can get to the rest of the stuff in here. The thing that sticks out to me is that they included a bag of screws, which I was super glad to see. I don't think I'll be needing these, but it's always nice when you're working on stuff to have extra screws in case you mess one up or in case you lose one, because they're very tiny. Next, we also have this suction cup puller thing, and it is absolutely disgusting. I have no idea where this thing was stored or who was messing with it in the factory, but it's gross. And I don't really understand why they included one of these anyway, because that's more something you would want for a screen replacement. Finally, I want to address the biggest abomination in this whole entire kit, and that is these screwdrivers. Not only is the design absolutely horrible, but they feel so cheap. I've bought a lot of repair kits on Amazon that come with crappy tools, like these orange screwdrivers for example. These are from Wii disk drive replacement kits, and this blue screwdriver I believe is from a DS screen replacement kit, but I'm just saying, these are cheap and they feel so much better, and I would take these any day over these from Gulikit. If you have anything nicer to use at all, here's what I recommend doing with them. Honestly, if you're going to include cheap crappy screwdrivers, just use a normal design like these, please. But anyways, I digress. I am not going to be using any of those. I already have a tri-wing bit for my screwdriver that I usually use, and it is a Y 2.0 size, and if you have any screwdriver like this, I would definitely use it instead of the ones that came with the kit. Now to finally get to the Joycons themselves, I am going to get my Switch out here so I can show you guys how to test them yourselves if you don't know what drift is, or if you just want a better understanding of how your controllers are drifting. I should also probably say I cleaned these up a little bit beforehand, just because they were pretty disgusting and there was a lot of dirt caked up in the rails, and I didn't really want to put them on my personal Switch with them being so nasty. And as you guys can already tell, they are drifting pretty bad. I am struggling to even navigate the menu because I can barely get them to move, and when the cursor does move, it moves to the spot I don't want it to move to. So the first test I'm going to do is going to be in-game, and I'm going to show you guys in Mario Odyssey how to tell if you're drifting and give you some examples of the way it drifts. So as you can see, I'm not even touching the movement stick and Mario is walking around on his own. And the camera stick on the right is also having a little bit of drift, but it's not horrible right now. It just still moves for a couple seconds after I let go of it. So based off of what I'm seeing right now, it appears that the left thumbstick is in the worst condition out of both of them. So next, I am going to just run around for a minute or two, just to show you guys that with these not having the worst drift possible, this game is still playable. It just might be a little bit annoying. Alright, so now that you guys have seen an example of how drift acts in game, I am going to show you a little bit more of the technicality of it. So in the settings of your Switch, you can go to Controllers and Sensors, and then in Controllers and Sensors, you can go to Calibrate Control Sticks, and this shows you a better example of what exactly your joysticks are doing. So whenever the cross pops up in the middle, that means that your thumbstick is perfectly centered. However, a lot of times when I let go of it, it'll go all over the place. And whenever the circle shows up on the outside, it means that you are on the edge of the control. Moving on to the right stick now. As you can see on here, it centers itself a lot less frequently than the left one does, which really surprises me. To be honest, I figured it would be the other way around because of the way Mario was walking around by himself in-game, and the camera wasn't really moving by itself all that much. But anyways, I wanted to show you guys how to do this, number one, so you can test your own sticks, but number two, just to show that both thumbsticks are definitely having a problem and both need fixed. The other thing I want to do is, within Controllers and Sensors, you can also go down to Test Input Devices, and I'm just going to test each of the other buttons on this real quick to make sure that they don't have any issues as well while I'm in there. And what do you know? After testing each and every button, it looks like the thumbsticks are the only ones that are having issues. Thank goodness. So now that we've identified the problem and have tested it to see how exactly it's acting, we know that they need replaced, so now we can go ahead and start with the teardown. Right now, I'm going to start with the left Joy-Con, and there are just 4 screws to start with on the back of this, 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. And these external screws require the size 2 Y bit. Now that we have the 4 screws out, we can go ahead and grab our plastic spudger and pry this thing open. Don't pry too hard because you don't want to break anything, but if you just stick this thing under there and kind of guide it along the edges, it'll pop free. And also be careful when you are opening it because there are 2 ribbon cables attaching both sides. Once you have it open, you're going to want to unplug the battery, and it's pretty simple. You just pull straight up on it. Once the battery's unplugged, you are supposed to have to pry on the battery from the side with this plastic spudger to get it loose, because there's supposed to be adhesive on the underside of the battery holding it to the plastic, but for some reason this one didn't have it on there, so I'm assuming someone has been inside of this Joy-Con before. Once you have the battery out, you're going to want to get a Phillips 00 bit, and there are 3 screws here that you need to take out. 1 at the bottom and 2 in the middle. You want to take care to avoid losing these. Make sure you keep them in a place where you can see them, because these screws are super tiny. I thought I had gotten this bottom screw loose all the way, but it still wouldn't come up, so I found it best to pry up with my fingers on the plastic just a little bit while I unscrewed it to get it out all the way. And now that we can take this piece out, we can finally get to the board underneath. You'll once again want to take care here because there is another cable attached to the middle plastic piece, and that is for the ZL trigger, and you definitely do not want to mess that up. Now, getting the joystick out on this left controller is a little bit harder because there's this long ribbon cable here, as you can see in the middle. First, we're going to unplug the ribbon cable for the joystick itself though, that way we can get the screws out. The screws for the joystick itself are once again Phillips 00, and I read online where people were saying you didn't have to unplug this ribbon cable here in order to get the second screw out, and that you could just move the cable and unscrew it around it, but unfortunately I didn't find that possible, so we are definitely going to have to take this cable out. It's worth noting that these cables are extremely fragile and that you need to take your time with them and be very careful. Make sure not to break them, and trust me, I've learned the hard way. Don't get too impatient. It's easier to just take your time with it instead of getting in a rush and breaking them. But now that we have that ribbon cable out of the way, we can go ahead and take out this last screw. Once both screws are out, the joystick should just pull right out. It might have a little bit of resistance to it just because it has this plastic film piece that it has to make its way over, but once you get it past that, it'll come right out. And now that we have the joystick out, we can see how dirty this old one was, and I am not saying that the dirtiness of it contributed to the drift, but it certainly didn't help. Now we're all ready to get out the new joystick, and zooming this out just a little bit so you can see everything well. This kit only comes with 2 joysticks, but obviously that's all you need to repair a pair of Joy-Cons. And I will have this kit linked down below. It's not an affiliate or anything like that, but I highly recommend this kit. It's super nice, and again, these are much nicer than the stock Alps sticks. Before I put the new stick in though, I am going to go ahead and put this plastic film piece back into place. I think that this just helps protect the thumbsticks from dirt and dust and whatnot, and also helps prevent that kind of stuff from getting into the Joy-Con itself. So you'll have to lift this ribbon cable back up again in order to get the new joystick into place, but once it's lifted out of the way, you can just put it into place. Once you have it where you think it should be, it doesn't hurt to flip the Joy-Con over while you're holding it, just to make sure everything looks right and looks like it's in the right spot. And now that we've checked that, I'm going to go ahead and put these 2 screws for it back into place. And be sure not to over tighten these, because number one, since the screws are so tiny, they're super easy to strip, and the other thing is you don't want to over tighten them because, again, since they're so tiny and they're going into plastic like this, it can be super easy to mess them up. And once both screws are in place, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and double check the tightness of both of them and make sure that the thumbstick is in there good, because you don't want it moving around while you're trying to play. So now that that is in place, we can go ahead and put the ribbon cables where they need to go. And as you can see, I kind of struggle with these just a little bit. The more I work with small ribbon cables, the better I get at handling them, but unfortunately, a lot of times I struggle a lot with them just because they're so hard to get back into place. We are also going to have to move this cable out of the way, because if you remember correctly, the joystick ribbon cable went underneath this ribbon cable. So the good thing about this kit is, from what I can tell, the replacement joystick ribbon cables are actually much stronger than the stock ribbon cables. So you still want to be easy with this, but I definitely think that these particular ribbon cables are going to be harder to break than the stock ones, because the stock ones are very thin and flimsy. Again, I would definitely try to be patient with these. As you can see, I am fumbling around with this quite a bit, and it's even sped up because it took me so long to get it into place. But as long as you're patient with it, you'll get it eventually, and you shouldn't have any problems. And now that it's in place, we can go ahead and close the latch on this cable. Next, I'm going to go ahead and put the left bumper back into place, because I lost it from the controller itself somewhere along the way. And there is a little groove for the spring to go in, and you just want to get it lined up, and then you can go ahead and put the plastic piece for the trigger and the battery back into place. I will say it was slightly difficult to get it lined back up, but once it's lined up, it'll actually push down a little bit. So you'll know it's in place whenever it pushes down and doesn't move around any. So now we're just going to want to put these 3 screws back in, and we'll be ready to put the battery back in after that. So now it's time to reinstall the battery, and this cable is a little bit more difficult to get plugged in than it is to unplug it, but you pulled it straight out, so you are also able to just plug it back in by pushing straight down on it. It's just a little bit difficult to get lined up because, again, it's small and the wire kind of moves around a little bit, so it makes it slightly difficult. Once you get all of that in, now you can just close this shell right back up, and it should snap back into place, but you will also want to go ahead and check the bumper and the trigger to make sure they're pressing properly. And once you make sure that they are, we can go ahead and put the 4 screws back into place. And once you get the screws put back into place, you can go ahead and feel the thumbstick just a little bit. Make sure it's not moving around any and see how it feels. And this one feels great. And with that, we are officially halfway there. Now it's time to move on to the right Joy-Con. And once again, there are just 4 screws holding it in on the back. And these are a size 2 Y-bit. And once the screws are out, we can once again take the plastic spudger and just go around the edges of it and pry it open. And once again, be careful when you're opening this, because same with this one, there are 2 ribbon cables on the inside that you do not want to pull apart. You can see that there are a couple slight differences with this controller. Obviously this has the IR sensor on the bottom, but there's also an extra little chip on this one. I don't know if it's some kind of wireless chip or what, but that'll need pulled out, as well as this battery cable will once again need pulled out, and you just pull straight up on both of those. And this battery actually does have the adhesive on it, so you want to be careful when you're prying on this. You don't want to get too crazy with it, but you basically just want to get the spudger in between the plastic and the battery, so that way it will pop it loose from the adhesive. And again, in order to make this a little easier to access, I'm going to pull this little chip out. I already broke the battery loose from the adhesive once, but because it sat all the way back down, it's stuck again, so I'm going to have to re-pry this out. And now that the battery's out, we can see that there is once again another difference with this controller. That being that the screw locations are different. There's still 1 at the bottom, but then there are 2 up by the right trigger. Now that those screws are out, we can go ahead and move this middle plastic piece. And it's hard to see, but there is another ribbon cable on this, and this one is a little bit more difficult to move out of the way. I think that the ribbon cable on this side is shorter than what it was on the other Joy-Con. So I kind of had to lift it up and twist it a little bit and get it out of the way that way. But now that that's out of the way, you can see that this joystick is much easier to get to, because there are no other ribbon cables in the way. You just have to unplug the joystick ribbon cable and take out the 2 screws holding it into place. And now you should be able to lift the joystick straight out. Again, there might be a little bit of resistance on it, but it will break loose. And as you can see, we barely even moved the plastic film on this one. So now I'm going to grab the new joystick out. And I wanted to note real quick, these do come with replacement film for the plastic film ring, but I don't think it's necessary to replace these unless they're missing. But now we can just push the new joystick right down into place. And I was going to try to see if it was easier to get this ribbon cable plugged in if the joystick is not pushed all the way down in yet, but it's easier to just push the thumbstick down into place first, because when you're doing it like this, it is kind of at a weird angle, and I was able to get it in, but still I'd recommend doing it the way I did the other one. But now we can go ahead and close the latch for the ribbon cable and get the 2 screws put into place. Now that everything looks good here, we can go ahead and put this middle plastic piece back into place. And once again, be careful, since this ribbon cable is so short, you don't want to break it. So be careful when you're pulling it up. Luckily, we did not have to put the bumper back into place this time. So now we can go ahead and put the 3 screws back into place. Now that the screws are in, I'm going to go ahead and put this small chip back into place. And this is a pain, but I eventually got it. Again, since it pulled straight out, you can just push it straight back into place too. And you want to make sure you put this wire back into this groove here. That way it's out of the way and doesn't prevent the shell from closing back up. And now that we're done with that, we can put the battery back into place. Once again, the battery connector goes straight back down into place. And I actually found this one a little bit easier to put back into place while the battery is up. And then you can fit the battery back down into place after the connector is where it needs to go. And now that we have everything on the inside where it needs to go, we can go ahead and close this back up and put the 4 screws back where they need to go. Now that we're done, it is time to test both of these, and there is a little bit of recalibrating that we have to do. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about the repair itself. I was kind of surprised at how easy this was. I figured it would be a lot more difficult, but just about anybody can do this, and I highly recommend you do it instead of waiting to send your Joy-Cons back to Nintendo to fix, or alternatively just buying whole new Joy-Cons to begin with, because $80 is a lot of money for controllers. So now you're going to want to go into the settings and go back to the calibrate control sticks option, and as you can see, the stick is still off center, but it is steady, it's not moving all over the place. So you can go ahead and hit the calibrate button, and it will have you perform these sets of actions, and basically it will help you to get these new joysticks to sit where they need to be. And it's worth noting that you should do this for both sticks, and this step should not be skipped because the Amazon listing even states on there that you need to do this. And as you can see, now that I've done this for the left stick, it is perfectly centered and is working just as it should, and there are no issues. Now it's time to do the same for the right stick, and as you can see, it is still off center, but it is steady. So we will go ahead and recalibrate that and get it right where it needs to be. as you can see once again for the right stick now, it is perfectly centered and working just as it should. One last thing that I would recommend doing once again real quick is going back to the test input devices and just make sure all your buttons are still working since you had the Joy-Cons apart. And I tested all of them and they all worked just fine. So this was a rather successful repair, and again I was really surprised at how easy it was, and I hope that this video will help make it easier for other people that are wanting to fix their Joy-Cons as well. I would go ahead and completely power off your Switch as well and power it back on. I don't know if this is entirely necessary or not, but that is the final step that they recommend doing in the Amazon listing, so I went ahead and did it anyway. It's not going to hurt anything, so you might as well go ahead and do it. And checking out both sticks once again, they're still perfectly centered, so it looks like we're good. So now I'm going to go ahead and load Mario Odyssey back up and show you guys how they're doing. So in conclusion, in this final bit of testing here, it feels like these Joy-Cons are doing great. Honestly, I kind of think that these feel better than the stock joysticks, even when they are working properly. And a lot of concern with replacing your joysticks is that some third-party replacements don't have the full range of motion, but it certainly feels like these do, and obviously they're not drifting anymore, so they are much better than they were before. So while I finish this little bit of gameplay, I will go ahead and do my outro. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if this video helped. Let me know if you're going to be fixing any of your Joy-Cons, or in some people's cases, maybe multiple pairs of Joy-Cons. And if you got through it and it was a successful repair, please let me know that too. I wish the best of luck to anyone that are going to attempt it, and I will see you guys next time.